This means so much to me. I stopped writing this movie about 20 times because I thought it was impossible. I thought it wasn't gonna work. I thought no one would ever make this movie, but I kept coming back to it because I knew if someone let me make this movie, that people would hear it and people would see it. So I want to dedicate this to all the people who raised my voice, my wife who supported me through this whole process, my mother who taught me to love even in the face of hate, and to everybody who went and saw this movie, everybody who bought a ticket, who told somebody to buy a ticket. Thank you. I love you for shouting out at the theater.
Born in New York in 1979, Jordan Peele was raised by a single mother in Manhattan. At a very young age, Peele fell in love with cinema, and at the age of 12, he realized he wanted to become a director. In college, Peele majored in puppetry, if you can believe that. I didn't even know that's something you can major in. During college, Peele would join a comedy class where he'd then join a comedy troupe, and then he'd drop out of college to pursue comedy full-time. In 2001, Peele became a member of an improv theater called Boom Chicago, which despite the name is actually in Amsterdam. In 2002, Boom Chicago would do a stage swap with Chicago's Second City, another improv theater where Jordan Peele would meet Keegan-Michael Key. After hitting it off, they would both join Mad TV, a sketch comedy show focusing on pop culture and current events, in 2003 for its 9th season.
It's number 2 in many markets.
Number two is Kanye, isn't it? He number 1. That beating me.
Peele would stay at Mad TV until 2008, when an invitation to join Saturday Night Live with his Barack Obama impersonation would be rejected because Fox wouldn't let him out of his contract a few months early.
Now, before I begin, I just want to say that I know a lot of people out there seem to think that I don't get angry.
Keegan-Michael Key would then leave in 2009. Following their exit from Mad TV, Key and Peele would then go on in 2012 to make a show called Key and Peele, which, if you're like me, is probably where you heard of them from. For those who haven't seen it, Key and Peele is a sketch comedy show. The first season is largely pre-written, where the following seasons include a lot more improv.
It's all right. He doesn't know what he's saying.
I wish to pee in your mouth.
What?
Both of you.
Mine?
Especially you.
Oh.
I wish to pee in both of your mouths.
Key and Peele was very well received, running from 2012 to 2015, earning the duo a Peabody Award and earning an Emmy for Comedy Central. In 2016, the duo starred in Keanu, a buddy action comedy movie. While critically it was well received, it did not earn back its budget. But in 2017, everything was about to change for Jordan Peele. Twenty 2017's Get Out was Jordan Peele's directorial debut, and a very promising one at that. Get Out earned Jordan Peele and Daniel Kaluuya a long list of awards, not the least of which being an Oscar at the 90th Academy Awards for Best Original Screenplay. Somehow Shape of Water beat everything that year, including Dunkirk, for Best Picture. I mean, I like Shape of Water, but what? Anyways, back to Get Out. What made Get Out so special? How did it show off Peele's talent as a writer and a director? I don't think we can talk about Get Out without first mentioning the incredibly nuanced look at racism that Jordan Peele puts on screen.
You know, I was trying to bring a piece of the conversation I'd never seen put on film before. I felt like there was this void in the way we talk about race. We felt like racism was not being called out.
It's also important to acknowledge that Peele wrote this film during Obama's presidency, but it was released immediately after Trump became president. That's to say that audiences watching this movie were primed for discussion about race and modern racism.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president.
Sure, we've seen racism in movies plenty before, but not quite in the way that Get Out shows. With Get Out, racism is not a direct hatred for another race. Instead, we see a version of racism where the people perpetrating it might be doing so obliviously. It's the type of racism where, in an effort to relate to another race, you focus entirely on the fact that they are another race. In an effort to point out that you aren't racist, you reveal that your main understanding of other people is through stereotypes. In Get Out, Peele puts us in the perspective of Chris. We feel firsthand what it's like to be reduced to a stereotype. As an audience, we understand that Chris has many different interests, so when meeting people, it sticks out like a sore thumb when they try to relate to him by saying they would have
voted for Obama for a third term if I could.
Or,
I do know Tiger.
the only time Chris is treated better is by the blind photographer Jim Hudson. Jim even acknowledges the way that other people have been treating him.
They mean well, but they have no idea what real people go through.
For a brief moment, you're relieved for Chris. After trying to connect with the few black people he could find to no avail, Jim offers him a moment of reprieve. This makes the later reveal of Jim being the one who purchased Chris's body much more betraying. While Chris and Rose have a heart-to-heart, Peele intercuts scenes from what we soon find out is a silent auction for Chris's body. It makes you feel sick to your stomach to watch a very vulnerable Chris being treated as property, but there's also a giant statement being made with the silent auction that I'd like to acknowledge. Peele could have made this auction not silent, and he could have made it more obvious that this was an auction and not just a weird way of playing bingo. But in choosing to make it a secret, he expresses the thing he wanted to show overall with this film. Racism is not gone, it's just sneaking around silently. Gone are the days of public slave auctions, in its place is a silent auction. Gone are the days of being openly racist, in its place a more deliberately silent form of treating other races differently. I know most movies with twists like Fight Club or anything by M. Night Shyamalan are easily rewatchable because once you know the twist, it's a different experience going through it a second time. But Peele does something different with this film that I'd like to point out. While most movies have very clear, this will be explained later, Peele presents very plausible reasons for everything happening on screen, so when the twists occur, you're actually not expecting it. In a way, they're red herrings.
If you can predict what and where an audience is going to go or what they think you're going to do, you can use that momentum against them.
Take, for example, this scene after Rose and Chris hit the deer.
Sir, can I see your license, please?
Wait, why?
Yeah, I have state ID.
No. He wasn't driving.
The first time you watch Rose talk to this cop, you're likely just thinking, this is commentary on how white people sometimes make black people's issues their own. But the second time through, you realize she's actually just avoiding a paper trail of evidence for where Chris went missing. Or here's another example. When Missy confronts Chris about his smoking habit.
Do you realize how dangerous smoking is?
The first time you watch it, you think that maybe she feels like she can order Chris around or that she's just really worried for her daughter's health. But on the second watch, you realize she's actually just preserving Chris's body as well as trying to get him off cigarettes so he doesn't smoke in front of everyone at the auction. Speaking of the auction, the party before it is a whole different beast the first time you watch it from the second time you watch it. Initially, you think that this is just the core of what the movie's trying to express. Racism is alive and well, just taking a different form. And while yes, it does serve that point, the next time you watch it, you realize that they're all just prospecting Chris's body. It's things like this that make Get Out so rewarding on rewatches. Also on rewatches, you notice a ton of small lines that mean entirely different things the second time through.
A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Such a privilege to be able to experience another person's culture. You know what I'm saying? That's the basement. We had to seal it up. Some black mold down there. My mother loved her kitchen, so we keep a piece of her in here.
Get out. Sorry, man.
Okay.
Get out!
Even the biggest reveal of them all has a little red herring in it. As we're swirling closer to the big reveal of what's really going on, you might be thinking that Missy Armitage is actually brainwashing black people, as we've heard Rod hypothesizing several times at this point.
Sex slave! I don't know if you know this. White people love making people sex slaves and shit. Because they probably hypnotized. I think that mom is putting everybody in a trance and she fucking the shit out of them.
Thanks, Rod. Bye.
You could even see how Georgina, Walter, and Andre's unusual way of speaking could be explained by them being hypnotized.
Nothing I don't want to be doing.
Even when you know Chris is in trouble, strapped to a chair in the basement of the Armitage's secluded home, no less, you don't learn the actual twist until Chris learns it.
Yeah.
For phase 3, the transplantation.
The only thing that made me think, this will be explained later, is the prolonged shot of Chris staring at the deer, which is also mirrored later when Chris is stuck in the basement. Really though, the deer is not something that needs to be explained as a twist, it's more of a symbol that is continuously referenced. A lot of people have recognized the connection to Chris's mom and how she died, but what I haven't seen mentioned is the deer's paralyzed. It's only able to watch what's happening to its body. It's a parallel to the sunken place. As well, when Chris manages to outsmart the Armitages by stuffing cotton in his ears, another very deliberate piece of symbolism, he uses the deer head to attack the patriarch of their family. I mean, technically Walter, the grandpa, is the patriarch, but you know what I mean. While we're on the topic of symbols, another great symbol in this movie is the sunken place itself. In my video on Annihilation, which you can check out here, I deconstruct how universal the shimmer is as an allegory. The sunken place gives the shimmer a run for its money with how universal it also is. It can really stand in for anything. Drugs, vices, societal issues, really anything that can throw obstacles in your path. We can confidently say that one of the defining characteristics of Peele's horror characters is that they're smart.
The protagonists are smart and they're investigative.
Chris never makes any decisions that make the audience frustrated. He tries to seek help when he can, and he avoids things that the audience would want him to. Peele has an excellent ability to turn up the temperature on the frog, gradually increasing the uncomfortable things that Chris is experiencing.
Every step into Weird Town, there's an equal effort to justify why the character doesn't run screaming.
And when things start going especially haywire, Chris decides he needs to leave.
Chris, you gotta get the fuck up out of there, man. You in some eye wide shut situation. Leave, motherfucker.
In other words, he's not a dumb horror character. Chris being such a good character isn't just because Peele wrote him to be smart, though. The way Daniel Kaluuya portrays Chris gives him depth and history. He feels like a real person. After having seen the movie at least 5 or 6 times at this point, seeing Chris talk about his mom to Missy Armitage still hits just as emotionally as it did the first time.
She was coming home. She wasn't home.
You believe Chris is really in pain over his mother still. Daniel Kaluuya is a massive talent, and it shows. I definitely need to acknowledge the elephant in the room. How does a sketch comedy writer become a world-class horror writer? The two may seem incredibly far apart, but as Peele said on Pete Holmes' podcast way back in 2013...
I feel like horror and comedy are very close.
Yeah, okay. Why?
And
how's that?
They're both about taking an absurdity, an extreme absurdity, and grounding it. Yeah, you would take something absurd, like, there's
a guy can kill you.
A guy can kill you, and he's burned, and he lives in your dreams.
Yeah.
Now, that movie's only going to be as scary as how real you can make the real parts of it.
It's Peele's ability to ground his writing that transfers to horror so well. Peele's approach to writing is actually really helpful for anyone who's trying to do something creative.
I think the best thing I ever did was I took the just the shackles off, pun intended, of having to write something that could be producible, so to speak. So I wasn't thinking about this in terms of it getting made. I was thinking of it in terms of what's my favorite movie that doesn't exist.
Peele wasn't writing a film worried about it getting made. He was writing his favorite movie that doesn't exist yet. On a personal level, I'm trying to use this advice to make my favorite YouTube videos that don't exist yet. Peele took years writing the script for Get Out, and you can tell. The cold open to this film on its own is very effective. It serves to immediately start the discussion of this movie, effectively setting the tone and making you curious all at once. You can immediately relate to Lakeith Stanfield's character. It's alarming to be in a neighborhood you don't know when a car starts following you. Also, it's almost entirely a oneer, only cutting at the very end to show a wide shot of the entire scene. The ending is one of the most satisfying bits of writing in any horror movie. After the exhausting climax of Chris having to fight off literally every Armitage, he sits over Rose with his hands around her throat. When police lights approach, you can only imagine the outcome. Either Chris will be blamed for the whole thing and incarcerated, or worse. Rod stepping out of the car is one of the biggest reliefs you could have had in this movie.
The police show up, the audience does all the work of the original ending. And then it's have my cake and eat it too.
Peele seemed to have a lot of fun with this movie too. I couldn't stop noticing small little details that seemed like homages to other films. The title text is seemingly the same hot blue color that The Shining used on its scrolling titles. It also has those titles over footage of our main characters driving through nature. Also, in the cold open, Andre refers to the suburb as a hedge maze. I appreciate these smaller touches. They're not too in your face, but if you care, you'll catch them. I'm sure there's a ton of other references I didn't catch, so if you caught any, comments them down below. I'd love to know. Also, it might be a reach, but I think Peele uses the Kuleshov effect in the opening sequences. The Kuleshov effect is the idea that two shots interacting with each other is more impactful than one shot by itself. When being introduced to Chris and Rose in the beginning, we see Chris shaving intercut with shots of Rose looking at pastries. The Kuleshov effect would definitely be implying that Rose sees Chris as a product. Get Out took Jordan Peele from a comedian to a household name. Peele became the first African-American winner for Best Original Screenplay, and became the third person in history to have his debut film nominated for Best Picture, Director, and Screenplay. Keep in mind, it did all that while being a horror movie. Horror movies barely ever get acknowledged during award season in the first place. Get Out earned $255 million on its $4.5 million budget, sitting at a lovely 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. Showing Jordan Peele's impressive talent when it comes to writing and directing, the success of Get Out prompted a first-look deal between Universal and Monkey Paw Productions. Get Out showcased Peele's ability to write grounded stories, making horror movies that stand out from the pack with humor and social commentary built in. Following the massive success that was Get Out, Jordan Peele had a big pair of shoes to fill with his next movie.
Then Soto went to Tewa and said, I want you to see what I have done.
With Get Out, Peele worked on the script for the better part of a decade and always pitched it as a throwaway idea. Us was made much quicker, releasing just 2 years after Get Out, and there was never any doubt about whether or not it would be made. There was now a pressure to perform, and the question presented itself. Did Jordan Peele have what it takes to be a great director, or did he just get lucky? Did the pressure affect Peele's sophomore film? Jordan Peele has said on several occasions that he won't be making movies with white protagonists, which may have raised concerns that all his movies would then just be about racism, but Us reminds audiences that having black protagonists doesn't mean your movie has to be about them being black. Instead, Us clearly is attempting to discuss class relations and the effect that upper and middle class Americans have on lower class Americans. It's not an entirely original idea. We've had lots of media talking about this for a long time. The message is actually really similar to another movie that came out in 2019, Parasite. These two movies both talk about class dynamics, and they both portray their lower class characters as people who live beneath their oblivious upper class characters. The main differences between these two films, aside from the scope of Jordan Peele's movie and the fact that Bong Joon-ho's movie is from the perspective of the lower class characters, is that Us insists that its lower class characters are tethered to the actions of the upper class. Parasite does show its lower class characters bending to the schedules and needs of their upper class characters, but they ultimately do have free will. The tethered in us are forced to mimic their upper class counterparts. The tethered in us mimicking their counterparts is an effort to acknowledge the difficulties of just regular life for people who are less well off. Peele posits that every win must be a loss for someone else. The tethered eat rabbits bloody and raw, according to Red. She had to birth her child on her own without a doctor or in a hospital setting. The tethered sleep in rooms full of bunk beds, where the overworld characters get their own individual bedrooms. The tethered are confined to grunts and yells. They're not educated, and also metaphorically, they don't have a voice to change the system they're stuck in. Just like in Parasite, the upper class characters are entirely oblivious to the struggles of the lower class. Our protagonists aren't made to be unethical people, just unaware. This movie also showcases the competitive aspect of money, having Josh and Gabe trying to passive-aggressively one-up each other. Although they're both comfortable, Gabe is seemingly trying to be one step further. He gets a boat seemingly because Josh got a new boat. He's jealous of Josh's new car. Their whole interaction is basically a pissing contest. Though I must acknowledge, Gabe has something invaluable that Josh does not. A family that actually likes him. The idea of blame also comes up quite a bit.
When you point a finger at someone else, you have three pointing back at you.
Addie's father's whole involvement in this movie seems like it's just there to show him shirking the blame and avoiding responsibility.
In trouble for winning my daughter a t-shirt. Haha, that's a new one.
Look at you.
It's not my fault she left.
Look at you.
It's not my fault yeah, well, look at me. Look at you.
This idea of shirking responsibility seems right in line with the inclusion of Hands Across America. Hands Across America was an event on May 25th, 1986, where, in an effort to raise donations for famine in Africa, People are invited to try to make one long continuous chain across the United States by holding hands. In a post-COVID world, this seems especially wild. While good-intentioned, this movement was heavily criticized as hunger was present in the US, and this type of event seemed like it was more for the celebrities promoting it and the people holding hands than for people who were actually going hungry. As well, there grew skepticism about how effective these events can really be at creating actual long-term change. Hands Across America managed to make $36.4 million, but after operating costs were taken into account, only about $15 million were actually distributed to charities. In an interview with New York Times, Peele said it felt like there's an insistence that as long as we have each other, we can walk blindly past the ugliness and evil that we may be a part of. Addie's father equally seems more concerned with doing what he wants and claiming he was involved than actually spending time with Addie. Though he is present and doing things, his actions aren't directly helping Addie, they're just a way to say he tried. The final twist of us reveals that the Addie we've been following all along was actually the tethered we saw in the House of Mirrors at the beginning. This twist, while potentially feeling a bit shoehorned in, is a great way to switch the dynamic that you thought you've been watching. You may have been reading this movie as though the lower class people are the way they are because they were born into it and that's how it's supposed to be. But the switching shows that people are actually just a product of their environment. The tethered have just as much potential as their counterparts. Addie went on to have a happier life, getting married, having kids, even being well off enough to have a summer house. Even someone who was once tethered underground can forget about the things happening beneath them. The thing about us is the writing is not nearly as sharp as Get Out's was. At times, some things happen that make absolutely no sense. Some things even strictly go against the earlier praise I gave Jordan Peele for his characters being smart. For example, when Zora hits her tethered with a car and sends her flying into the woods, Addie, without saying anything, gets out of the car alone, seemingly to search for this tethered who we've just seen is very dangerous. This isn't just unreasonable, it's dumb. Granted, you can tell why this scene is here. It becomes a personal moment between Addie and her daughter's tethered, where she comforts her as she's dying. But Addie didn't know that she was dying. For all she knew, she was getting out to fight this tethered one-on-one. It just wasn't written in such a way that you can understand why she makes this decision to get out of the car alone without saying anything to anyone. And the same issue is present with the whole tethered family. Every time we see a tethered person, they kill the person they're tethered to without any wasted steps. But when the protagonist's tethered break into their summer house, they just sit there and exposit before giving each and every one of them the opportunity to fight back or escape. I also feel the choice to have Red say, "We're Americans," is too on the nose. As a joke, it doesn't really land, and it's also never a good idea to say the quiet part out loud. Another inconsistency I can't quite figure out is why Pluto sometimes has to mirror Jason's actions perfectly, but only sometimes. That being the way that they kill Pluto is just confusing. Another big part of the issue with this movie is just choosing to make the tethered so painfully literal. See, this scene of Red expositing everything about the tethered is not only unprovoked, but it creates an issue where we as the viewers now understand that the villains in this movie were very literally forced to do the things that their overworld counterparts did.
The girl met a handsome prince and fell in love with the shadow. At that same time, met Abraham. It didn't matter if she loved him or not. The girl had a second child, a boy this time. They had to cut her open and take him from her belly. The shadow had to do it all. Herself.
This detail sends the viewer's mind off wondering how far that goes. What do the tethered do when their counterparts get in cars? Where are they getting their supplies from? It's acknowledged that the tethered only get to eat rabbits. Where are these rabbits coming from? If it was allowed to be more ambiguous, the viewer could choose how literal they think this is. This is compounded when we're shown footage of the tethered mimicking their counterparts at the fair, and further compounded when Red exposits about how this is a government experiment gone wrong in an attempt to control the people above. I'm aware that sometimes people try to read too literally into movies that don't need to be examined logistically, but Red's speech asks us to. It asks us to go down that road and understand what these tethered are doing. And to be clear, I think it's totally fine for a villain to be literal and fleshed out, but if it's fleshed out, it should make sense. On a semantic level, I feel that the final twist was probably added after the movie had been written. When you learn that the Addie we've been following has actually been the tethered we saw in the House of Mirrors at the beginning, a lot of her earlier scenes become contradictory. Addie tells her husband about her encounter in the House of Mirrors from the perspective of the girl who got stuck in the tunnels. But it's not all bad. Like I said earlier, it's a good way to shift the view of the class dynamics you thought you were watching this whole time. Also, on an even more semantic level, how did none of Addie's trauma ever come out before this movie? They have a summer house very close to the place where this traumatic event happened. You can tell that they've been to this summer house before. Is this the first time they've ever wanted to go to the beach? Anyways, that's just semantic. Peele shows his understanding of directing much more with us. Where Get Out was a great story shot for a rather low budget, Peele could spread his wings on us and render a much larger story than he could with Get Out. The cinematography between Get Out and Us improved with Mike Goulakis becoming the cinematographer. You may recognize his work with M. Night Shyamalan. Peele also shows his creativity much more with Us. The high concept nature of this movie could only be fleshed out by someone with a very vivid imagination. In my personal opinion, I think Us is much more effective at being scary.
There's a family in our driveway.
This line is genuinely terrifying, and the home invasion that follows is really well done. Us is, in my opinion, also much funnier than Get Out was.
I'm pretty sure I could kick your ass, so she looks like you. And
Winston Duke may be off in his own movie, but he never misses comedically. The comedy is also spread much more throughout the screenplay, rather than being placed on one character's shoulders like how Rod was the main comedic relief in Get Out. Peele laces this movie with tons of homage and foreshadowing. As a child of the 80s, Peele's appreciation for horror movies of that era really shines through with Us. The villains in Us feel like they were ripped straight out of an 80s horror movie. Memorabilia from this time period is hiding in every scene. The flashbacks even go back to a time when Michael Jackson's Thriller was relevant enough to win a t-shirt referencing it at a boardwalk. Beyond the obvious love for 80s culture that Peele put in this movie, he also loves to sneak thematic elements foreshadowing ideas to come in the movie. There's actually so much to this topic that I could probably make a full video just on the details in Us, but in lieu of that, I'll just mention the very big ones. At the beginning of this movie, you see a bunch of VHS tapes run an old TV. These are all references to things that are going to happen in this movie. Goonies, Nightmare on Elm Street, Chud, The Man with Two Brains, these are all referencing ideas that are going to be present in this movie. In the opening, we watch Addie wander into a house of mirrors that literally says, "Find yourself." If you listen closely to the audio, you hear narration about Hopi mythology, referencing someone called Sotuk Nang.
Look all about you, Spider-Woman, said Soto. Here now is endless space, but in the world there is no joyful movement.
Hopi are the westernmost Pueblo Native Americans who believed that the humans used to live beneath the earth. You would have needed to watch this movie with your eyes closed to not see how many references to Jeremiah 11:11 there are. Jeremiah 11:11 is a verse that says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." This seems like it's mostly just foreshadowing the uprising of the tethered, but 11:11 is also a visual symbol. It's a reflection of itself the way that the tethered reflect their counterparts. It's also a way to emphasize the coincidental theme purveying this film. Peele's use of symbols comes out, harkening back to the themes of this movie too. Zora picks up a golden golf club in Tyler's house to defend herself. Golden scissors are used by the tethered to untether themselves. Heck, you could even see the rabbits as a symbol for the tethered themselves, aligning with the Easter mythology of Jesus Christ being reborn and emerging from a cave. Lastly, in the improvement section, I just want to acknowledge Peele's use of callbacks. It's almost like Edgar Wright had a hand in making this with how many callbacks there are. Here's the one I can think of off the top of my head. The ambulance toy followed by them driving off in an ambulance. The door that doesn't open from the inside then being used to trap Pluto. Hands Across America. Jason's magic trick and Pluto's arsonist tendencies. The boat and its quirks. Josh's boat. Josh's flare gun. Josh's car. Zora's running. Addie's dancing. And that's just to name a few. Us may have had its missteps as far as writing goes, but it allowed us to get a bigger glimpse into what Jordan Peele is capable of creatively. You see much more of Peele's touches in the 80s horror-centric ideas and the love for having twists. Peele's movies almost operate like a mystery because you're spending most of the time wondering what's actually happening. You get the compounding emphasis on social commentary being one of the most important parts of Peele's writing process, and you see his growing ability to lace thematic ideas throughout his movies. Get Out in hindsight feels like it could have been made by anyone, where Us feels like it has Jordan Peele's signature all over it. It feels like he gained a clearer understanding of the directorial tools available to him. Us earned $256 million on its $20 million budget, sitting at a great 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. Do I think Jordan Peele fumbled with Us? No. But I think Us shows a very eager director adjusting to his newfound recognition and running into some very big growing pains along the way. Us may have been financially just as successful as Get Out, but critically it left a lot of people unsure. People who grew up loving the same horror movies that Peele did probably loved it, but beyond that smaller subset, a lot of people just thought it was okay. For a lot of people then, Peele may have seemed like he was just another director whose movies didn't demand being seen. In 2022, Peele would attempt to set the record straight by creating a spectacle-filled blockbuster in Nope. Nope may seem like a very transparent blockbuster, but the amount of commentary layered in it is actually shocking. With this simplistic blockbuster, Peele talks about erasure in Hollywood, the abusive business of spectacle, the participants' misled beliefs about their traumatic experiences, wild animals and their nature, and probably more. Gordy's home is a miniature of the whole movie. Gordy's home sets up Steven Yeun's character Jupe's backstory, showing the traumatic event that he believes to be the best part of his life. It sets up the themes about wild animals and the abusive business that is spectacle and Hollywood. Mary Jo Elliott's shoe standing on its heel is the bad miracle, brought about by a terrible event that momentarily distracts you from the terrible thing that caused it. The impossible shot seems to be this concept of spectacle taken to its extreme, a shot you can only get once, a shot from the perspective of the consumed. Antler's Holst, played by the great Michael Wincott, is a cinematographer who seems to be the personification of that idea. Antler's is seen watching footage of animals killing other animals as any regular guy does. Also, like any regular guy, he's very cryptic with his great gravelly voice as he explains his dream of getting an impossible shot.
Horse girl, this dream you're chasing, the one where you end up at the top of the mountain, all eyes on you. It's the dream you never wake up from.
We later get to see him live out this dream, achieving his impossible shot as he gets consumed by the alien they've been chasing, lovingly nicknamed Jean Jacket. Antlers and Jupe as characters are Peele exploring his own guilt in the Hollywood system. He's questioning why he feels the need to create and capture spectacle, and questioning his relationship to the spectacle. Peele is both Antlers, a man who understands the business he's a part of and partakes anyways, and Jupe, a man who romanticizes a traumatic event and considers it to be the best part of his career and seeks more things like it. Jupe calling the alien the viewers adds another layer to an already complex web, implying that we, the audience coming to see the spectacle, are also complicit as a piece of the machine.
Did you get that on camera?
The TMZ reporter being much more concerned with getting a shot than the fact that he's terribly injured is a much more on-the-nose announcement of this film's ideas. For only being Peele's third movie, it's a bit interesting he already chose to make one reflecting on Hollywood. It makes more sense if you step back and realize, as I said at the beginning of this video, Peele's only been in the director's seat for 3 movies, but he's been in the spotlight way back since his improv days. I know I praised Us for its improvements in cinematography from Get Out, but I'm going to do the same thing for Nope. That's not to say that Get Out or Us didn't have great cinematography, but Nope just takes it to another level. Nope sees the acquisition of Hoyte van Hoytema, the director of photography behind such gems as Oppenheimer, Dunkirk, Interstellar, Tenet, Ad Astra, Her, and plenty more. I remember watching Nope in theaters when we get to this slowly creeping shot backstage on Gordy's home. This is when I decided I needed to watch it a second time, but in IMAX. Something about this communicated to me that this movie demanded seeing in just the most immersive format I could. Nope was Peele's first opportunity to shoot in IMAX, and he makes the most of it. One of the first scenes in Nope is a great landscape where Keith David's Otis Sr. is seen slumping over on a horse that's slowly walking forward before falling off the horse. This shot to me is just striking. The vast unending landscape gives a sense of wonder. It fills you with awe at the same time that it fills you with dread. Another great use of the camera in Nope is this shot of Jean Jacket raining blood down on the Haywood Ranch. It gives a great sense of scale and perspective. It puts you in the shoes of someone looking up at this creature. Another breathtaking shot of Jean Jacket is this one right at the climax of the movie when he's transforming as OJ tries to lure him away from his sister. This is genuinely an amazing visual, showing the full spectacle of what Jean Jacket is. The roof getting ripped off the shed is great. It makes Jean Jacket feel like a real threat. And this shot of the wind going through Mary Jo Elliott's veil has become very iconic to me. It feels like something grand is about to happen. Moving on to sound, Nope uses sound in a very integral way. Peele knew that it would be more effective not to show the alien too much. That means you need to give it some other sort of presence, which Peele achieves through sound. Johnny Byrne worked with Jordan Peele to create a very ominous soundscape for Nope. Wind is used very extensively in Nope, and it's used in a way that I struggle to find any other example of a movie using wind.
One of the main sounds we were using was silence. I think what is apparent throughout the film and became a really powerful tool, the more we finesse the mix and the more we go through the process of removing additional noise in dialogue and all the kind of rough temporary sounds that get thrown into an Avid, the more we realized that the best way of demonstrating Jean Jacquet's presence was to have suddenly, all of a sudden, the wind dies down and, you know, the crickets stop chirping and suddenly there's nothing.
See, you get used to hearing the wind in Nope, so when it goes silent, you feel like time stops. You can't quite put your finger on what's different, but something changed. It's unsettling and effective. The other great thing about the sound of wind is it sounds so similar to people screaming in the distance.
God damn it. Thought I told you to fix the damn walker.
In this initial scene at the ranch before Otis Sr. is struck, you hear wind slowly turning into screaming, but shortly enough for you to think, did I really hear that?
And the idea of, hearing wind, and what if you just heard a scream, and then when it's over, just the phenomenon that sound is this interesting thing that you can hear something, and then when it's over, you can really question whether or not you heard it or not.
The Gordy's Home event is also a great example of audio being used to a greater effect. We don't actually see Gordy hurting anyone, we just hear the impacts. I'm sure you've heard this before, but making a viewer use their imagination is almost always more effective than anything you can actually show them. Implied violence does not need to worry about looking realistic, and it allows the viewer's imagination to go wild. Nope has several very clear influences, namely Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You can feel the influences of Close Encounters through the obvious alien connection. The encounters in both feel especially dangerous, and once the moments pass, they leave you stunned. Both movies follow people who, after their initial encounters, end up seeking out another encounter like it. Both movies have their alien's presence disturb electronics, with Jean Jacquet turning everything off, and Close Encounters alien turning everything on. The connection to Jaws becomes more obvious when OJ figures out that the UFO is actually a creature and not a ship. Now you're dealing with an animal that's great at hiding from you in plain sight. The endings of both Nope and Jaws see the creature blown up, though I think a balloon popping to kill Jean Jacquet is much more self-referential to the balloon popping on the Gordy's Home set. Also, Antlers is a parallel to Quint from Jaws. At one point, Jordan Peele said the intention was to introduce Antlers watching Jaws. Peele was also influenced by Evangelion's depiction of angels in a more biblical sense. Jean Jacquet is heavily inspired by the aliens in Evangelion. Jean Jacquet functionally seems inspired by Ramiel, the fifth angel, which can float and fold in on itself. Jean Jacquet's mechanics are also inspired by Sahakwiel, the 10th angel, which floats around and disrupts technology just like Jean Jacquet. The giant white sea creature look of Jean Jacquet after it transforms is very reminiscent of the 6th angel, Gagiel. Evangelion is not the only anime that Peele references in Nope either. He includes this bike slide as a nod to Akira, which a lot of people caught. But did you notice the similarity between the shot of Jean Jacquet consuming everyone and Kaori being crushed by Tetsuo as he transforms? Nope by nature takes on a bit of the feelings and tone that these influences had. Evangelion as a series uses big blockbuster ideas like giant mechs fighting giant angels and sneaks in psychological ideas that make you think much more than any blockbuster regularly tries to. Both Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind are directed by Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg usually can capture a sense of awe that's only present in his own movies, but somehow Nope captures that same sense of awe. With Nope, Jordan Peele makes us look up to the sky, wondering what we might see. Gladly, the great writing of Jordan Peele returns with Nope. You don't have any characters being dumb for the sake of the plot. The character's involvement with Jean Jacquet is all motivated by real things. Each character is also fully developed. You can tell Peele thought through each of their backstories even if we don't get them on screen. Also returning with Nope is Daniel Kaluuya. We also get the talented Keke Palmer as his sister Emerald, and they're written like genuine siblings. OJ is quiet and reserved around people and only ever seems comfortable around his sister or animals. Their relationship is very well represented. They can be mean to each other at times, but at the end of any interaction you can tell they do care about each other. M is very much the extroverted sister who seems to have felt left out by her father in comparison to OJ. OJ is the only one in this movie who consistently cares about animals, even going as far as giving the alien a name, Jean Jacket. Also, subtly, there's little details about how he treats people like animals, like how he pats his knee to get M and Angel to run to the truck, or like how he habitually doesn't let himself make eye contact with most people, just like how you treat animals, which goes right in line with him being an introvert. OJ and Emerald also contrast in their attachment to the ranch.
Pops did something when he made this place. He changed the industry. That's real. I can't just let that go.
OJ feels a very strong responsibility to keep Haywood Hollywood Horses going, while M views it as a side gig and is ready to drop it as soon as the first alien encounter happens.
Let's go.
Where?
I don't know. I got me a little situation, and that water texting me back right now.
It's not coming again tonight.
I don't care.
This encounter is also a great illustration of Peele's writing. In any other movie, it would be totally reasonable for the characters to run screaming from this ranch, but inexplicably for plot reasons would just stay anyways. Peele has given weight not just to the heritage of this ranch, but to OJ's love for horses, so we understand why he wouldn't want to abandon them. It's also metaphorical. OJ is trying to stop the erasure of his family's history in Hollywood, just like the black jockey who is almost entirely unknown in the history of Hollywood. I don't think it's ever explicitly said either, but I think his intuition and how he treats everything like animals tells him that most animals don't hunt twice in one night, so it'll be okay. Jupe is a former child star. He chases the spectacle that he survived in his youth and seeks other experiences like it. He continues going by his character name instead of his actual name, Ricky. He makes a theme park with the name Jupe, and he even has a small exhibit of memorabilia from the show Gordy's Home, including the infamous shoe. He says people pay to see it, and one couple even paid $50,000 to sleep overnight in his exhibit. Jupe believes this tragedy was the highlight of his career, and the fans obsessing over it reinforce his belief. Jupe's encounter with Gordy has left him thinking that using animals in shows is a good idea, not recognizing the inherent luck that he survived his encounter with Gordy in the first place. Jupe did not learn his lesson. He's the first one to encounter the alien, and he attempts to make a show at his amusement park where he feeds the alien a horse in front of his spectators. And one day, inevitably, when something goes wrong, Jupe learns his lesson as he and everyone at his park, including his family and Mary Jo Elliott, are consumed by Jean Jacket. Or does he learn his lesson? This almost seems like what Jupe would want, his own impossible shot, except no cameras are rolling. Angel? I don't know if I have much to say about Angel other than that I love him. He may be just an inclusion for an audience surrogate. He may represent something, but I just like him being around. Angel is played by Brandon Perea, and he actually had a hand in changing Angel's character as the movie was being made.
You know, we put out a one line about the character, what I thought the character was. And you came in with a very clear view of who Angel was. And it was not who I was asking for, but it changed the role, and it changed the way I looked at the role.
Peele gives the audience a lot of credit. There are quite a few things that aren't just spoon-fed to the audience. Did you put together that Gordy actually went wild because of one of the balloons popping? Did you gather that Jean Jacket attacked the TMZ reporter because he had a reflective helmet? Did you gather that Jean Jacket consumed Jupe and everyone at his park because he was angered by the training horse getting stuck in his throat? Even the things that are said out loud are not very explicit. The only mention that Jean Jacket was angry about the training horse was in this passing line by OJ.
That little fake horse and flags messed it up good. Got stuck in his windpipes or something.
The flag attached to the training horse becomes a very critical part of the movie after this too. I don't think anyone in the movie acknowledges that Jean Jacket can't consume non-organic materials, but you get that just through what Jordan Peele shows you. Peele, in this movie, uses tension like he never has before, and he uses several different methods to pull that tension. A camera slowly moving into a scene where an ape is going wild but we're a bit too far to see what's actually happening. An extended shot of what we think are actual aliens invading the Haywood Ranch, moving as slowly as possible. A TMZ reporter showing up and being nosy. M trying to get a picture of Jean Jacket attacking the Jupe balloon. All of these are just very different ways to put the audience at the edge of their seat. We also get all the mainstays from the previous Peele movies. The comedy is non-stop and it's spread through the entire screenplay.
Tell the horse we're ready to do one.
You're constantly seeing hints towards elements of the movie that are yet to come, such as the opening credits being over what we later find out is the inside of the alien, which looks like a camera sensor and is projecting the clip of the jockey on the horse that's relevant to the whole movie. We get the visual metaphors that Peele is getting better and better at, such as the alien transforming into a biblical angel only with what appears to be a camera sensor flashing at its victims. We get the non-stop callbacks that Us showed us Peele can do. We get dialogue that can mean multiple things on rewatch, like how Get Out had.
Yet he is a force of nature. He is killing on that stage.
Acting all territorial. I guess some animals ain't fit to be trained.
And while we're adding to the list of things that appear in Peele's movies, all of the cast except for Michael Wincott are people of color. You don't notice because it's not really the focus of the movie, but the casting is very diverse. There's a heavy emphasis on wild nature being violent. In the background of the fast food place that our main characters convene at after surviving Jean Jacket's attack, there's a fight amongst a bunch of young sports ball players. As I previously mentioned, Antler's Holst is shown at times to just casually be watching footage of wild animals fighting. It's really just another nod at how good Jordan Peele has gotten at interlacing themes into his stories. You just gain a sort of faith in Jordan Peele as a director. You know that the initial shot of the tragedy on the Gordy's home set does not accidentally have a flashing applause sign. You can tell it's not a coincidence that the thing that killed Otis Sr. was a nickel. These are all thematic ideas being laced into the story. The idea that we applaud tragedy sometimes, or that sometimes cheap thrills come at a huge expense. Nope, in my eyes, is Jordan Peele's confirmation as a capital G great director. It gives you subconscious faith that everything rendered in his movies is intentional and not just accidental. You can tell Peele is aware of all the directorial tools available to him now, and I get excited to see the way he's going to creatively use those tools. Nope sits at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes and earned $172 million on its $68 million budget. While that may be commercially less successful than his previous two, I think Nope is Jordan Peele's biggest achievement yet. We should also keep in mind that this box office was stunted by a lot of things that happened between Us and Nope. For instance, COVID and streaming. A lot of people got used to not going to movie theaters and streaming things instead. That's to say that it's natural that then a movie released after COVID and the pandemic is going to have a harder time earning as much as a pre-pandemic movie. This movie really did have an uphill battle. But what I can tell you is that no matter what Peele makes next, I'm very excited for it. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. It means the world to me. I took way too long making this video. It was initially just going to be a video on how rewatchable Get Out was, but then you can't really talk about Get Out without talking about the racism. And then you can't really talk about the racism in Get Out without also mentioning the climate that it was released in, and that this is Jordan Peele's first movie, and that it's a horror movie that won an Oscar. The further I got into it, the more I realized I couldn't just make a Get Out video. I had to make a video about the director, Jordan Peele, because he's truly a special director. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking or subscribing. If you want to keep up with the movies that I'm watching currently, you can follow me on Letterboxd at GNSJake. Did you count how many different haircuts I had throughout this video? What are your opinions on Jordan Peele and his movies? Let me know in the comments below. Other than that, thanks again so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.